Hello, my name is Donnie Piercy. I teach fifth grade in Lexington, Kentucky. I've been teaching for the last 15 years, all fourth and fifth grade. However, throughout my education career, I've worked with grade levels through kindergarten all the way up to even high school and higher ed. I'm also the 2021 Kentucky Teacher of the Year. And so let's go ahead and let's start to dive in. So this workshop, it's all about how you can use this app called Google Earth. Now, some of you, if you're brand new to this tool, or if maybe this is the first time that you've thought about it in 15 years, because Google Earth's been around for a while. Maybe you remember 10 or 15 years ago when you first saw Google Earth, you went and found your house on it. Maybe you found your school. You had your students create what they used to call tours on Google Earth. But here's the thing, when Chromebooks came out about 8 years ago, Google Earth did not work on Chromebooks. It was a separate downloadable program. And if you didn't have a PC, a desktop, or a Mac, you couldn't use it in your classroom anymore. However, a few years ago, Google Earth was completely updated for the web, and now it is a completely it's no longer a downloadable program. It's something that can work on Chromebooks. It even works on iPhones, iPads, Android phones, anything that has an app store. And so it's really device agnostic by this point, which is really, really cool. So during this workshop, I'll be showing you how you can use Google Earth, really regardless of what grade level you teach, K to 12, but more importantly, how you can use Google Earth to have your students collaboratively tell stories. So let's go ahead and let's dive in. So first question that you probably have is, hey, how do I get to Google Earth? Well, probably the easiest way to do it is just like with anything else. You go, if you forget, right? If you forget how to find something, you just go to google.com. You type in the Google Earth, look, I even misspelled it there, the app that you're looking for, and click launch. It'll take you to this page where you can actually still download the older version of Google Earth. It's not called old Google Earth, it's actually called classic Google Earth. However, the one that we are looking for is the one that works on Chromebooks. So to do that, you just jump down here and there's a button that says Launch Earth. You click the button that says Launch Earth and it opens up. Now, keep in mind, Google Earth, it's the entire planet's imagery saved in one spot. So sometimes this takes a little bit longer to load. Obviously depends on your bandwidth and things like that. Doing Google Earth over Zoom with 25 students on a Zoom call might run a little bit slower than if you're just using your classroom projector, your classroom LCD screen, or your classroom whatever to show your students. So just like with anything else that's Google related, there's actually a search function. And so as I look around kind of the Google Earth window right here, I'm just clicking and dragging. However, the cool part about Google Earth is being able to look and search for things. And if it's on the planet, you can find it on Google Earth. So I'm just going to click the search bar right here and we'll search for, I don't know, let's try one Main Street, search my hometown here, Lexington. And if you notice, it pulls up some suggested searches for you. You can just click one of those and then like magic, it'll fly you to that spot. Now, what's really, really cool about Google Earth, they have what's called the 3D imagery for most of the major cities in the world, not all. So you can kind of see it in this right here, how things kind of have that 3D slant to it, where you can kind of see like the trees popping out, the buildings popping up. Fun little pro tip to show your students. If you click and then hold down Shift when you're close to the surface of the Earth, like I am now, you can actually click, drag your mouse forward, and then you can really start to see some of that beautiful 3D imagery. And you can even fly along the ground using the arrow keys like I am now, right? To really kind of have your students explore their world. So you can search for stuff, but the real magic and the real power of Google Earth, especially in the classroom, comes in this tool that are called projects. Now, here's what you need to know. 15 years ago, when Google Earth really first started to become more mainstream, you could do these things called tours in Google Earth, where you could have a bunch of different stops along along different locations on the planet. You could press play, and then you could walk through those different stops along the tour. Well, in new Google Earth, which is this web-based version here, they're no longer called tours. You can still do that. However, they're now called projects. So I'm going to show you how to really quickly create a project. And then I'm going to show you a web page that I've put together for you all that has just some examples, different things. Some of these are former student examples or just ways that you can use Google Earth instead of having students just looking at stuff and consuming information, which is still important, but instead you can have them creating using this tool called Google Earth, right? So let's talk about how to make a project, right? Let's do the basics first, and we'll dive into some pro tips here. So here on the left, tell you what, let me make this a little bit bigger here. Here on the left, you'll see that there's all these different icons, and you can play around with these if you want. But there's this little button that says projects, right? So as you probably figured out, you click the button that says projects, and then listed on here will be all of the projects that you have created, or that others have shared with you, because projects are actually collaborative, just like a Google Doc, a Google slideshow. These can be shared and edited with others, right? So to make a new project, you just click the button that says new project, and then you click create project in Google Drive, because what happens is in your Google Drive, the second you visit Google Earth for the first time, you now have a folder in there called Google Earth, where the links to all of your projects exist, right? So it's all sorted for you, organized. If you can't find one, you can always jump in there and locate that project. So we're just going to make a really quick tour, a really quick project. See, even I call it the wrong thing from time to time. We're going to make a quick project, and then we'll talk about some advanced ways that you can use this, right? Now, keep in mind, just like with any Google tool, there are thousands upon thousands of YouTube videos out there. I have some listed on my resource page that you can check out if you're looking for even more like basic or even more in-depth stuff. But let's kind of dive in here and let's start to play around. So first thing you want to do is you want to give your project a name. I'm just going to click the pencil here, and we'll call this project, let's call it Live in Kentucky. So we'll call it Places Around the Bluegrass, right? Here in the little description box, when somebody views your project later, the little description is just a little write-up about it. So we'll say, here are some iconic places around Kentucky, right? You could have students do all sorts of stuff there, copy it in, maybe they type it on a Google Doc and then they paste it in. But now we want to start adding things to our project, right? So I'm just going to click new feature. I'm going to click new feature there, and then I'm going to press search to add place. And then I can search for anything. And when you think of Kentucky, if you're probably like me, you probably think of maybe Churchill Downs, right? And if you notice I misspelled it, we can pretend I did that on purpose, but I misspelled it. And it pulls up suggested things just like in Google. So let's head over to Churchill Downs. I'll click that, and then Google Earth will fly us to Churchill Downs, right? If you notice, it kind of flies you directly above it. And if I want to add this to my project that I can view later, guess what? All I got to do is just press this button that says add to project. I choose the project it wants to go to, and then I press save. Just added the first place on my project. Let's add another spot. But for this one, we're going to kind of, we'll, as I like to call it, we'll bedazzle it a little bit, right? So I'll press new feature, search to add place. And, Kentucky, we're known for I mean, I don't eat there, but we're known for the home of Kentucky Fried Chicken, right? Which you probably didn't know that the first Kentucky Fried Chicken is actually in a place called Corbin, Kentucky. So I'll search for, let's see, it's now called the Harlan Sanders Cafe and Museum, right? Where the original one was. So I'm going to add that. So I'm going to click search. It'll now fly us there. And for this one, we are going to add a little bit more to this. So I'm going to press the button that says add to project. And instead of pressing save right away, I'm going to click edit place, right? And it's now that I can start to customize it, right? Up here, if you notice, it adds information from Google to this project. However, I want to add my own info. I don't just want stuff that's like listed on the Wikipedia page to be pulled onto this. I want to add my own stuff. So I'm going to click replace. And first thing I can do is I can actually add a photo. So I'm going to click the camera. And if I had like a photo of me eating at the first KFC, I could actually upload it. I can actually do a Google image search. You can actually add YouTube videos that people that are going along your tour that or your project that they can watch as part of it, which is actually really cool. If you have an image saved on a URL, but for this, I'll just do a Google image search and we'll search Kentucky Fried Chicken, do a search, and gotta get the iconic bucket right there, right? So I'll press select, and sometimes it takes a minute. But what's really cool about these Google Earth projects, kind of like on a slideshow in Google Slides, you can have more than one image. So let's add another one. Let's see. It's like the Beyond Meat. We've got Beyond Fried Chicken. So we'll add that as part of it too. You can add some custom text. We'll put, this is where the magic all started, right? And this text will appear below it. You can also choose what kind of what they call info boxes appears along the tour or the project when people are watching it later. A small info box just appears as like a little white box in the top corner of the screen. No info box means it just takes you to that spot. Or if you just want what they used to call it the side panel, but now it's called the large info box where it kind of slides in. Now, you can also customize what's called the tilt, right? Or the angle or the view that when you're going along the project, that when somebody comes to the stop that they see. And right now we're literally, it's like we're hanging from a camera or hanging from a helicopter and the camera is facing face down, right? And a little fun tip in the bottom right-hand corner, it tells you exactly how high above the ground you are. And right now our camera, it's 1,165 meters above the ground. But I want to customize this view. I want it where we're directly above, which is still cool to see, but instead I want to customize it a little bit. So I'm going to pinch to zoom. I can also zoom in and zoom out here if I wanted, but instead I'm going to use that little trick I showed you a little bit earlier. I'm going to hold down Shift and I'm going to click and tilt the camera so it's alongside the ground. And you'll notice on this spot on the tour, there's no 3D imagery. In other words, they have a photo from the satellite, but they haven't yet added that 3D building. Remember, everything on Google Earth is not 3D just yet. Now, the magic button comes once you reach that, once you find that the camera angle that you want, the altitude above the ground that you want, you just click the button that says capture this view. Boop. And then you'll see here that it changed the heading, the tilt, the range above the object that you are, and even the latitude, longitude coordinates that you're at. I can also, if I wanted to, I could customize the place mark. Right now it's this yellow color. I could change the color if I want. I could even make it where it's extra large so it really stands out. And just as a fun little aside, you can also upload a custom icon to it. Maybe you've got a photo of a bucket of fried chicken that you want there, or they even have a couple hundred custom icons that are actually filterable. So if I search food, let's go with this fast food icon there, and you'll see it changed it there in the middle, right? So I'll go capture this view one more time, and then we'll jump back. I mean, that's the basics of it, right? And what's really, really cool about this project is because this exists in Google Drive, it's collaborative. So if I was working on, say, this project with a student, if I was working on this project with maybe a co-teacher, we were putting together an example project, right? Maybe we're trying to show our students, hey, here's where we're going on this field trip. Here's the places we're going to see, or a simple example, right? Maybe you had we just finished up our unit on the civil rights unit, and my friend Mr. Smith, who teaches out in Las Vegas, he shared this tour, or this project, of all the important places along the civil rights movement. He just shared it with me, and if you notice, I can't edit it, I can't add new features to it. All I can do is press present. And when I press present, it now walks me through all the important places along the tour. Here are the images, right, that he chose as part of it, some newspaper clippings. Down here in the bottom left, if you want to move from spot to spot along the project, you just click these little arrows or chevrons, and it magically flies you to the next spot along the project, right? And including these street view images, right, that he chose to be a part of it. But it's one of those tools that's very, very, it's powerful, right? Because it's not just static images on a slideshow. It's not just even like a video on YouTube. It actually has locations that are associated with these spots. And for a lot of students, especially younger students, where they've only ever seen like images, when you can associate it with place, when you can associate some of these powerful images of, in this case, take the civil rights movement, now students understand where these locations are happening. And for a lot of them, especially those younger kids, but for older kids too, it's where the Google Earth really transforms from that cool thing where you can go and look at your house, where now it transformed into a tool that they can use to explore the world. And obviously, if you can take your students to these places, it's better, right? But especially in the age of COVID, it's tough to travel nowadays. Teacher budgets are not exactly, we don't, as cool as it would be to take our students to Paris, France every summer to check out the Eiffel Tower, that's not exactly in our teacher budget. But it's in those type of experiences where Google Earth can really, really, really come to life, right? So the question is, how do you share these projects, right? So I'm going to jump back to my project again. I'm going to jump, and here's where's that project that I was just working on here. I'm just kind of jumping around here a little bit. How do you go about sharing these projects? So there's that one that I just made that was called Places Around the Bluegrass. If I wanted to share this with somebody, all I literally got to do is click the share button in the top left-hand corner. And then just like on Google Docs, I just click the person's email here. I can choose whether or not to make them an editor where they're collaborative with me, or I can make it where they're a viewer. In other words, all I want them to do is just look at it. I can type a message. Hey, check this out, Lance. I put a little smiley face there. Press send. In an email, it would put the that message on there, and more importantly, when they opened up Google Earth, they'd be able to have access to it. So that is literally the basics of how to make a project, right? But the question becomes, okay, what are some ways that you can use this, right? Obviously, if you're a high school like geography teacher, you're putting projects about where different locations around the world. Maybe you're teaching them about how the planet has changed. Maybe you're having them, go explore different rock formations, whatever. But, Google Earth, it's a tool where it's not specifically designed for one grade level. It's not specifically designed for one field, right? For one field of study or one subject area. It's not even designed for school, right? So what's great about it is it gives teachers, or it allows teachers to be really, really creative with how they go about using it. So I mentioned this earlier, but I have a resource page that I've put together for teachers. And it's called, I call it Welcome to Earth Collaborative Student Storytelling. It's on this bit.ly right here. So if you have if you want to go ahead and write this down, it's bit.ly/Google Earth Collab. If you go ahead and go to that URL, it'll open this up for you. And then on here, I just have a whole bunch of little examples, and I'll walk you through a few of them here. But just some different ways that students can go about using this tool in the classroom. And I'll share a few of them now, right? So one of my favorite ways that I use this, especially, I teach elementary school, which means I teach all subjects. I actually use Google Earth as a writing tool, right? And like all writing teachers, one of the first pieces that I have my students work on every year is they work on a personal narrative, right? They go ahead and they plan out a piece on a Google Doc. They'll type out that 5-paragraph essay of, what was that an interesting story that you want somebody to know about you. And then what I do is once that writing piece is finished, and by the way, that writing piece could also be collaborative. If you have a group of 4 or 5 students that are working together, they then go and they take that writing that they did, and then they transfer it onto a Google Doc where every paragraph becomes a different location in their story. So this, this is a story that was written by a student a few years ago. I copied it from her account over to mine. But, she wrote about how her and her dad, were they went to the University of Louisville to, her dad did, and then they got to travel to see the University of Louisville football team play in Marshall, West Virginia, right? Or Huntington, West Virginia. And she said that what she did was she went and she found those locations on Google Earth that were part of the story, right? So this is a small text box, right? That's all up here. And all she did was she typed it out first on a Google Doc. She pasted it into Google Earth. And now, like, it's part of the story. The first part was her traveling to Marshall University to watch the University of Louisville play them in a football game. So I said, well, find the highway that you drove on. And she did. And she captured the view. She tilted it so it looks a little bit more authentic. And now it becomes an interactive story. The next part of her journey, right? The next part of her journey, she stopped off. There's a place in West Virginia called Hillbilly Hot Dogs. It does exist. I did not believe that it exists when she told me about it. But she went and she found where Hillbilly Hot Dogs was on Google Earth, included some of this Google Earth imagery as a part of it, and copied and pasted the text onto this project. So that way, when you get to that part of the tour, that's on there, and it goes on and it continues. And not to say that student writing can't be interesting in text alone, but when you add locations to that, to that writing, it makes it so much more authentic. It really, really, really brings that student writing to life. Because one, if a fellow classmate is reading it and they have no idea where this place is or where Marshall University is, or heck, that there's even an Interstate 65, right? For so many of them, it brings that writing to life, and it turns it from what could be a static narrative into something that becomes an authentic story, right? So that's one way. You just have students do some creative writing where they're using the planet as their canvas. Well, there's other ways that you can do it too. My friend Jerome Berg, some of you might know Jerome. He taught for over 30 years. Um, and Jerome, when he retired, wanted to, he was a high school English teacher. And he discovered Google Earth right around the time that he retired. And he decided to start a nonprofit that he called Google Lit Trips. And so, these are free, by the way. All of his Google Lit Trips and stuff are free. But what Jerome did, and what he does, is he takes books from high school level English class down to even something that you might, as a kindergarten or first grade teacher, read. And he takes those, he transfers them over to Google Earth, where now they are, not only does he retell those stories on Google Earth, but Jerome also goes, and as part of it, you can kind of see it on some of the images here. He also goes and incorporates questions that, after you read the story, after you experience that with your students, whether, and again, I am elementary school, so I included more of a primary example, but he has Newbery Award winners, he has high school advanced AP Lit stuff on here. So I definitely encourage you all to check this out, because these are, again, just like with student writing examples, it connects so many of those stories to place. And we talk so much in school about the importance of setting, and not just knowing what happened, but where it happens and the effect that can have on the story, right? Um, but Google Earth, it doesn't have to be just fiction. It does not have to be personal stories. And one option that I give my students to do every year with their Google Earth, or with any books that we read in class, like I try to give, instead of doing the traditional book report or the diorama, and one one of these years I'm actually going to host a diorama rama, which I think could be fun. But one of the options that I give my students is, well, why don't you, especially with a historical fiction book, maybe you've read the story Number the Stars before. Instead of writing that 5-paragraph summary of what happened in the story, find where those locations happen and turn it and retell the story, for using Google Earth as the canvas, right? Now, this is not a student example. This is one that I put together, just an exemplar for my students so they could see what it looks like. But it's the same thing with the personal narrative. I took a fictional story, which was historical fiction, connected it to actual locations, or sometimes you have to get creative. If it doesn't say exactly where something happened, you can go find like the city and maybe find a neighborhood that match the author's description in the text. But it really, really, really brings those stories to life for students. Again, if you're doing a read aloud with your class, maybe every couple of chapters on Google Earth, you go ahead and add that project. You add the next, well, what just happened? Oh, let's add that. So later we can go back, and as a way to remember what happened in this story, we can connect it to what we just saw on Google Earth. And just like with everything else, these can be collaborative too. Maybe you have your students go ahead and add stuff to it. So there's a whole bunch of examples on here from as a science project, I have my students design a scale model of the solar system and they plan it out on Google Earth. Math teachers, you can even, you can draw polygons on Google Earth and have students determine the perimeter area volume of your school. So many ways that you can use this tool. And I really, really encourage you over the next few weeks, maybe as you come to the end of the school year, you want to just try something different in prep for next school year, which, now that we all have kind of this base level of technology now, right? That, this remote teaching experiment, this online teaching experiment, whether you've been hybrid, in person where you're using more technology, or full remote, we've all kind of developed at this base level, right? We all know how to share a Google Doc. We all know, here's the basics, right? And so many of us are now looking for that next level thing. Like, what can I now do differently using technology? Google Earth is a great start. So, like I said, my name is Donnie Piercy. I teach fifth grade. I'd love to connect with you all on any type of social media. I'm on there on @Mr. Piercy. Feel free to reach out with me with any questions you may have. All my contact info is listed on my resource page. But other than that, thank you all so much, and enjoy the rest of the conference. Bye. I don't know why kids say bye. Do they do that in Iowa too? Do they go bye? Right. And then I don't know where that comes from. But anyway, bye.